everyone.
Hey guys.
Welcome to I Feel the Podcast, where we, and by we I mean Sachi and
Tisha,
talk about daily life topics and add a scientific spin to it. Alright, so before we actually get started, let us tell you guys a little bit about ourselves.
So I'm Tisha again. I went to LSU and I have a PhD in neuroscience. And me and Sachi were actually in the same labs at LSU.
Yeah, and I'm Sachi. Well, I don't have a PhD in neuroscience, but I have a master's in neuroscience. Although, neuroscience doesn't sound as fun, but trust me, we're fun people. So, the topic for today is going to be gossip.
Gossip.
Yeah.
And so what we want to do is kind of take everyday topics and just put a little scientific spin on it so you can get some of the science of the topic and then a little bit of fun about the topic as well.
Yeah, so let's dive in and get to actually know what is gossip, because we all love to gossip.
Yes.
We love to gossip. And I think that everybody thinks of gossip as something which is very malicious, which is something which is very negative. But the truth is, even from the psychology point, that gossip doesn't necessarily have to be negative.
Right. It doesn't have to be good or bad. It can actually be neutral as well, right?
Yeah. It can be neutral. It can be even positive. So, yeah.
Okay. So let's get into a little bit of the science behind gossip. So by definition, according to social scientists, gossip is any talk about someone who isn't present, is usually about something we can make a moral judgment about, and it's entertaining, of course. Everybody loves to gossip. And this is according to McAndrew.
Yeah. So now we know that, well, gossip doesn't really have to be negative. It could be positive, it could be negative, it could be neutral.
Right.
And I think the bigger question is why do we gossip?
Yeah.
Why do we love to do it?
Right. Why do we like to talk about each other so much?
Yeah.
So according to evolution and the psychologist Robin Dunbar, gossip is actually a form of bonding, and it has been compared to grooming in primates, for example.
Yeah, and what's so interesting is when we just looked at the study of what Robert had done, what came out was that, instead of picking fleas and dirt off of each other, all these primates were like, well, let us just talk about people.
Yeah. So it just kind of evolved into that way where we, instead of, cleaning each other, now we just gossip and talk about each other instead.
Yeah, and also, it's such a great way to communicate, know about other people, and also talk about social issues. So whenever you're talking about social issues, don't really think that you're gossiping, because that's not gossip. Well, it is gossip.
Kind of.
It is gossip. It is gossip.
And I guess also it is a way for us to keep up with one another, especially now since we have social media and, phones and things, we all like to talk and know what's going on with one another. So gossip is a way to keep in contact as well.
Yeah, that's true. And I think even general conversations, if we're just talking about anybody else other than two people who are present in the room, and even if we are saying good things about that person, that does qualify as gossip.
Yeah.
According to the scientific definition, of course.
So Sachi, what's something that we gossip about a lot?
Celebrities?
Definitely.
I think.
Yeah. We get so obsessed with people like the Kardashians.
Oh yeah, I'm obsessed.
Yeah.
I totally am obsessed by the Kardashians.
I almost feel like I try so hard not to pay attention to them and watch their shows and everything, but I can't stop. It's so addicting.
It is addicting, and I think that's how reality shows kind of thrive, and everything even we see on social media, that's how it thrives. And the fun fact is, of course Tisha is going to speak more about that, but from what I know is when we are gossiping about celebrities, it basically is activating the reward center in our brain.
Yeah, so we kind of get rushes of dopamine or like the happy hormones in our brains that make us want to continue to do it. So like I was saying with the Kardashians, even if you don't want to pay attention to them, it's like our body is physiologically telling us that, like, to be obsessed with them.
Yeah, that is true. Like if you like something, you would want to talk about it. You would want to like really dive deep into it because you're getting that dopamine rush all the time, and whenever you are talking about it. That is why gossip in general is addicting, and also about celebrities, it's very, very addicting.
Yeah. Because I think even now their shows isn't really about like drama per se or anything to like really keep up with, but you still just can't help but watch and like check your Instagram or like just want to know what's going on. So
yeah, that's true. But that is gossip.
Yeah.
So now that we actually know that gossip can be of different types, it could be positive, negative, and neutral, I think what we need to do on our part is be very mindful whenever we are doing some form of negative gossip, because whenever there's negative gossip, there are consequences.
Yeah, definitely. Even in my own experience, I've definitely had times where I've shared something that I've heard about one of my friends, like in my undergrad, and it pretty much ruined a relationship between two of my friends. Like they just stopped talking to each other because what my friend had told me was a lie.
Oh.
And so I went back and told my other friend about what they said. I'm like just transferring information from one person to the next, and then their friendship was over.
Oh God.
So definitely can have negative consequences,
and lots of negative consequences. Now that you brought up this story, like I broke up with a guy because he gossiped too much.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah. So,
very, very true.
You know, like
people are just out here spreading lies
about other people and like about your relationship too.
Yeah.
And that's such an ick.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can't deal with that.
Yeah, it's definitely a big turn off, just generally.
Yeah, so like even in the relationship scene, if you find a guy who gossips too much, that's a red flag.
Definitely a red flag.
Yeah. And Tisha, what I've also noticed is that we only gossip about people when we are in misalignment with them.
Yeah, because that really will be, at least negatively, that would be the only reason you have to talk bad about someone, right?
Right. True. When your energies don't align with that person or something, that's when you're gonna be saying negative things about it.
Yeah, definitely.
I know, like we've talked about all the negative stuff and the negative gossip, but of course, coming back to the positivity of gossip, like I know I've heard about doctors and lawyers, you know, who have done amazing work, and it's just through, you know, your peers, your friends, and people who've actually been to those doctors would come and tell you, oh, that person's a great doctor. If you need to get something done, go to that doctor.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so that's positive gossip, that's positive information that I maybe needed at that point, and I'll be using it in my future.
Yeah, it's really like word of mouth kind of. So even with celebrities, we can still spin things into a positive light. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, me and Sachi both like to read a little bit and go to Barnes and Nobles and things. And so we'll exchange, new books that are out. Like Michelle Obama, she just put out a new book. So something like that where we're still talking about people, but we're talking about them positively, so It's not necessarily a bad form of gossip.
Right, and I absolutely, I still have to read the book, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be amazing, and it looks amazing, so definitely that's going to be our next read. But, just when we think about celebrities as well, and people, of course, like Michelle Obama is not in the room with us right now. Hopefully she is one day. But obviously, we get so inspired by her, and we're just talking about her right now as well. So that, if we think, psychologically and by definition of the scientist, that is gossip too.
Yeah, it definitely is gossip. It's just we're putting positivity towards it. So
right. And I think that's what we all need to do, kind of just monitor ourselves. If we find ourselves talking negatively about somebody and we know that is something that we cannot go and say in front of that person.
Yeah.
I think that's something to be very mindful of. If we can't say it in front of that person, please don't say it behind their backs, because things get spoiled when you talk shit about people.
Yeah, and it really nothing good comes of it. Nothing good comes towards you when you talk bad about other people. It's probably like people are talking bad about you as well then.
Yeah,
So.
that's true. So let us all be very mindful, but that now we know what is actually gossip doing to us. It releases that dopamine in our brain. That is why we feel so good when we gossip. Let's be mindful, let's be positive, and do the positive talk instead of the negative talk.
Definitely.
So, to everybody who's watching and listening, keep on talking. And when your conversation turns to gossip, as it inevitably will, remember that some good can come out of it, with the right intentions, of course. So now that with all the information about positive gossip and negative gossip brings us to the end of the very first episode of I Feel the podcast. And somewhere in between we did talk about how if we are misaligned with somebody or just somebody's energy or something, we tend to gossip about them.
So next week, on our next episode, we're going to talk a little bit about why that occurs. Why are we misaligned with people, and what happens when we aren't necessarily in sync with one another? And also follow us on social media. So
please follow us on social media. Give us all the love and support that you have.
Follow us on TikTok and Instagram at IFeel_podcast. And we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.